We're going to finish up our tour of Johnson County here. Our third stop is Williams Prairie State Preserve. So we're just north of Oxford on the floodplain of the Iowa River. Williams Prairie State Preserve is partly and probably mostly sedge meadow, pretty much from where we are down towards the river to the north. I would call this more of a sedge meadow area type of community. Lots of sedges, so more of a wetland. But on the north side, and we're going to kind of focus more, on the south side, to the south and to the east of us is a little bit more of an upland area. Species that, again, kind of sedge meadow or wet prairie we'll do here, and then we'll get up to a little bit higher ground where we'll mostly be seeing prairie species. But this one is a monkey flower. I'm going to pass it up since it's a pretty characteristic and kind of easy species to identify. You see these flowers here, they're kind of two-lipped. Two-lips means that the petals are fused in a way to form sort of an upper lip right there, and a lower lip, these three petals down here. And I guess you could kind of say there's maybe a mouth that's open there with sort of a yellowish tongue. Monkey flower is called monkey flower because someone thought that the flower resembles a smiling monkey, I guess. The monkey flower used to be in the Scrophulariaceae, the figwort family. That family has been kind of dismantled and many of those species put into new families. This one now is in the, I believe it's the Phrymaceae family. It's got opposite leaves that come down to the base and pretty much join each other. So sessile leaves that kind of attach to one another at the base. So nearly perfoliate, maybe not quite, but very close. And then those very distinctive smiling monkey face flowers. The flowers are arranged on long pedicels. Here you can see single flowers arranged on a long pedicel coming out. One here, and there's another flower bud over here. There as well. So that's pretty characteristic too. So again, sedge meadows are on the wet side of wet mesic prairie. A good place to find monkey flower. There's another one. Let's back up a little bit and point to this one right here. This is actually a shrub or a woody species. This is Spirea. Spirea alba is the scientific name. It's in the rose family, the Rosaceae. So it is a small shrub. Can get a little bit taller than this, certainly, maybe upwards of a couple of meters. And then small white flowers. So the rose family has kind of a characteristic flower. It's a little bit hard to see on the Spirea here, but a portion of the flower is all fused together to form a cup-like structure called a hypanthium. And then the female and male flower parts arise from that cup-like structure. Spirea, or white Spirea, Spirea alba. Well, we moved up a little bit higher at Williams Prairie here. Now we're definitely in an area of more mesic prairie, maybe even a little bit of dry mesic prairie. I know from some other research I've done here, as we get up into this area, there's a little bit more sandy soil, so it gets a little bit drier. So we have a plethora of species here to look at. We're going to try and pick on things that, of course, we haven't seen or looked at yet in this series. The first one is this really big one right here in front of me, white wild indigo. Really gestalt type of plant you can really identify pretty easily once you've recognized it, seen it a few times. We don't have any flowers. The flowers were up here at the top, large white flowers, typical large pea type of morphology in those flowers. We do have one legume here, the fruit, that's still sitting there. But the leaves on white wild indigo are, like many, most legume family or Fabaceae, are compound. So we got 3 leaflets here. This is a leaf right here with 3 leaflets. The leaflets are very glabrous and sort of glaucous are the 2 terms. Glabrous means no pubescence at all, no hairs, and glaucous means that it has kind of a bluish waxy film on top of the cuticle. Sometimes you can actually wipe that off, but it just makes it look a little more shiny. So this is Baptisia lactea, white wild indigo. Just the large, really large plant, large branching top to it, again makes it pretty unmistakable. Right in front of it here is Culver's root, Veronicastrum virginicum. A couple plants there. So again, we can see a very elongate inflorescence structure here, several branches, small white flowers. This would be a spike. These small white flowers are attached by their bases to this axis. And we have just a few flowers left here at the top. Lower down here, they're all done. They're beginning to form fruits. But there's still a few flowers that are still open and pollination still occurring at the top here. Vegetatively, Culver's root is pretty easy to recognize too, because we don't have a lot of plants that have whorled leaves. We've seen a few today, we've seen a few in some other tours. This one again has 4 leaves at 1 node, so again the term whorled leaves. I think, last time out in Preparation Canyon, we looked at Starry Campion, and I mentioned that vegetatively, you might confuse Starry Campion with Culver's root or vice versa, because again, the leaves are about the same shape and size, but notice on this one, the leaves are very clearly, use the term serrate. They've got little sawtooth teeth, little teeth along the margins of the leaves there. The best way there, I think we can see them now in the light there. And Starry Campion does not have the serrations. Veronicastrum virginicum, Culver's root. All right, then right next to me here, one of the Rudbeckias. So there's three Rudbeckias. There's 4 of them in Iowa. There's 3 of them that we would tend to see out on a prairie environment. This one is Rudbeckia subtomentosa, or sweet coneflower is a common name for it. So the other ones, black-eyed Susan and brown-eyed Susan, again are going to have a very similar flower, the same kind of look here. We've got an Asteraceae, or an aster family plant here, which has ray flowers. These are small flowers that surround a center portion that has disc flowers. So a large number of disc flowers form that brownish center, and then probably about maybe 20 or 15 or 20 or so ray flowers. Each of these single petals is a ray flower, go around the perimeter. So Rudbeckias, the 3 species, I guess, again, that we might see in a prairie, are kind of separated by, partly by the leaves. This one here, sweet coneflower, subtomentosa, mostly has leaves that are have 3 leaflets, or in some cases it depends upon how deeply how deeply these are cut. They might be lobed, might be described as being lobed. Here they're a little bit more lobed. Down here they're cut deeper, so each of these might be described as a leaflet. Almost all the leaves throughout most of the plant, again, have the 3 lobes or 3 leaflets. A few at the top, do not. These up here don't. The real common black-eyed Susan, Rudbeckia hirta, which I think we will probably see here somewhere in just a little bit, doesn't have any lobing or leaflets. All of the leaves are going to look more like this, and it's also a pretty hairy plant. Lots of pubescence. Then the other one, Rudbeckia triloba, which is sometimes referred to as brown-eyed Susan, and it's usually often seen in more partial shade types of environments. It's going to be potentially more confused with this one because it too will have, hence the name Rudbeckia triloba, it will have leaves with 3 lobes. But usually it's just a few of the lower leaves on Rudbeckia triloba. Doesn't have as many of those leaves having the 3 lobes or 3 leaflets as we see here. Plus, there's sort of a technical character that separates this one, sweet cone flower, from Rudbeckia triloba. If you look at the disc flowers really close here with a hand lens and kind of tear things apart, you'll see that there's little bract-like structures. It's called chaff, or receptacular bracts that are in and amongst those disc flowers. And in Rudbeckia triloba, if you look at those, they have a very sharp point to the top of them. The tops of those bracts are really sharply pointed. And in this species, those little bracts are more rounded at the top. That's something you really need a hand lens to look at because you have to tear the disc flowers kind of apart here like this and dig down in there and look for those bracts, which again is best done with a hand lens. All right, then we'll do one more here. I guess before we take a break, we can just kind of jump right over here. There's a group of stems here that have very clearly opposite leaves, kind of ovate to ovate elliptic lancelet leaves here. Very stiff, kind of you can see how stiffly held these leaves are, kind of characteristic. This is one of the silphiums. So this is a relative of compass plant, which is Silphium laciniatum. This one is rosinweed, which is Silphium integrifolium. So again, it's a relative of compass plant. Leaves are much, much different though. As you can see, not literally the same kind of leaf as compass plant, but it does have these, again, pretty distinctive, sort of rigidly held, pretty stiff, always opposite, sessile leaves, which is no petiole there. The leaves are attached to the stem by their base. We don't have very good flowers here, unfortunately. We have one just kind of beginning. Again, this is going to have an acerate type of flower, again with that radiate type of head, which has ray flowers around the perimeter, disc flowers in the center, except this one's not developed at all. It should be about that big. Maybe they will come along here. It looks like maybe it's been too dry. They're not doing very well. Something interesting about the silphiums, a compass plant and rosinweed, and also a cup plant, which is also a silphium, is that the ray flowers, the ones that have the large yellow petals that surround the disc, those ray flowers, they're the ones that produce the seed. They're the ones that are fertile and produce seeds. The disc flowers in the center are neutral. They are not fertile. They don't produce any seed. All right, we got 4 more new species here for us to take a look at, and the first one is going to be a nice contrast with then that last segment we looked at sweet coneflower, Rudbeckia tomentosa. Here's its relative, the black-eyed Susan, Rudbeckia hirta. And again, the leaves on this are all just look all like this. There's no lobing on any of those leaves on this species here. So that's the easiest way to sort of separate again black-eyed Susan, Rudbeckia hirta, from the other 2 species which have lobes. All right. Again, this is Rudbeckia hirta. Hirta refers to the pubescence. Kind of see the backlight here kind of shows, I think, the pubescence on the stems, quite a bit of pubescence on the leaves as well. So it's a fairly hairy plant. All right, then the next one we're going to look at is this one right here. It's got a few flowers on it yet. Pull this forward here a little bit, and we can see that these are legume type flowers. The kind of the typical pea flower there. This is a species of Desmodium, or tick trefoil. And again, the flowers kind of tell us that, as well as the leaves. Trifoliate. Trifoliate means 3 leaflets. There's go. There we have a leaf there. Oop, 3 leaflets. Grab another one here. Because in order to tell which species of Desmodium, we need to look at these leaves and see relatively how long the petiole is, which again we can see here is minuscule. The petiole is just that little portion right there. How long that petiole is relative to the rachis right here, this section right here between my thumbs there. That's the rachis of the compound leaf. And again, we can see that the petiole is very much shorter. We have another one here. This one's a little bit, this is a little bit bigger leaf maybe, but again, we can see that same pattern. The petiole is very, very short compared to the rachis in here. That means this is showy tick trefoil, Desmodium canadense. Another common species that we could see out here is Illinois tick trefoil, but that would have a much longer petiole. The petiole would be actually longer. The petiole would be longer than the rachis right in here. That's one good way to separate the two species. Another one is the stipules. Stipules are tiny little leaf-like structures. They're kind of hard to see on Desmodium here, but at the base of the leaf, right in here, are a couple little stipules. The size and shape of those stipules can help distinguish the two species as well. This is Desmodium canadense, showy tick trefoil. All right, then one that's vegetative and kind of all around us right here. I'll just top snatch one right here is this one. You see it's got very slender, almost grass-like leaves, about the width of a grass leaf, but not nearly as long. But that gives you a clue to its name. This is grass leaf goldenrod. Grass leaf goldenrod. And again, don't have any flowers. When it does start blooming a bit later on in the summer, we'll have the typical goldenrod flowers up here. There's 2 species in Iowa. This is Euthymia. This is Euthymia graminifolia. The graminifolia again refers to the grass-like leaves. So the way you separate the 2 species is by looking at the leaves here, and one of the characteristics of grass leaf goldenrod is having a central vein, which is very clearly seen, but then 2 smaller veins on either side that are pretty distinctive. So 3 main veins. Sometimes you can see another pair of veins. I can't here, I can just see the 3 veins, the main central vein and 2 veins on either side of the central vein. Sometimes on a little bit larger leaves, you can sometimes see it's really a second pair, so 5 veins. I'm not seeing that on any of these. But the 3 or maybe sometimes 5 veins is distinctive for graminifolia. The other species, which is more uncommon, Euthymia gymnospermoides, only has mainly just the one strong central vein. It doesn't have the 2 additional veins on the side. Euthymia graminifolia, grass leaf goldenrod. And one more to finish up here is step back just a little bit and look at this one. And again, maybe I can top snatch it there. So one thing I see right away, and I did that, I cut here, I got some milky latex coming out. So that milky latex alerts you to a couple of possible families. One, of course, would be the milkweed, or now the dogbane family, Apocynaceae. But that's not what this is, because this is the other one that often has milk associated with it. This is the spurge family, Euphorbiaceae. And this is Euphorbia corrallata. The flowers are small, tiny, white flowers. Euphorbias have kind of complicated flower structures in there. It's kind of interesting to take a closer look at them. There's some glands that are associated with the flowers, and actually the white structures we see there are appendages. They're not really true petals, they're just appendages that are associated with the glands. So it's kind of a unique flower, certainly. Very spreading inflorescence. Euphorbia corrallata, flowering spurge. Flowering spurge. All right, we're going to take a look here at kind of unusual species for a prairie, because this is an annual, and most of the species out here are perennials. This is partridge pea, Chamaecristae fasciculata, which is a plant in the pea family, of course. We have these compound leaves, lots of little leaflets, again, a common characteristic of the pea family. I don't know for sure, these may even have a little bit of touch sensitivity to them. I have to check on that, but sometimes the leaflets on these seem to fold up in response to touch. Another interesting thing about these, if I can pull off, it's going to be really hard to see, but pulling off a leaf right here, then I had it's going to be really hard to see, but right down here is a tiny little nectary. Nectary is a little structure that produces nectar, of course. And the unusual thing, of course, is that this nectary is on the leaf. It's towards the bottom of the petiole of this leaf. Most of the time, of course, nectaries are in the flowers, where the nectar is an attraction for pollinators, and a reward, of course, for pollinators coming and moving pollen from plant to plant. So it's kind of unusual to have a nectary that's not in the flowers, instead on the leaf. And I've seen evidence that lots of different insects will utilize the nectar from these. I've seen pictures of ants, various species of ants, and different species of bees using them. One idea is that perhaps, in at least the case of the ants may be getting a reward for helping to provide some protection to the partridge pea. Ants can be pretty aggressive, and at least in some species, their social system is built around defending their own home, but in this case defending this food source, and so they defend the plants. All right, partridge pea, Chamaecristae fasciculata. All right, then we're going to jump to this tall torch. I can sometimes think of these blazing stars as a torch out on the prairie. This is prairie blazing star, Liatris pycnostachya. So there's 7 species of Liatris in Iowa, and this is the one that's most associated with, I would say, mesic prairie, and is probably the one that's most distributed statewide across most areas within the state, wherever there's any kind of moist but well-drained prairie. It's really distinctive with the elongated torch here of flowers. Now this is in the aster family, so again it's in the same family as like compass plant and the Rudbeckias that we were looking at earlier, the sweet cone flower and black-eyed Susan. But this has a much different flower, as you can see. And so that's one of the things you need to learn about the aster family, is that while some of the aster family have flower heads that look like this, that have disc flowers and ray flowers, both types of flowers in one inflorescence. Other members of the family have only disc flowers. And that's what's happening here in the blazing star. There are no ray flowers. There's only disc flowers. And each one of these little inflorescences or heads probably has about, maybe in some cases maybe 3 or 4 disc flowers. In other cases, maybe 6, 7 disc flowers. Those disc flowers are subtended, and subtend means to be situated below. So here again, let's look at a head here with the disc flowers. Up here, the petals of the disc flowers, and then subtending those disc flowers are called involucral bracts. Those involucral bracts are very important in helping to identify blazing stars. In this case, again, the prairie blazing star is pretty distinctive just in its overall form of the inflorescence here, of the way that the heads are arranged here, in this elongated column as we're seeing. But you can also, in some cases, might need to, again, use those involucral bracts. On this species, those bracts are tipped with a sharp point, and they kind of curve back just a little bit. So a little bit recurved. In fact, maybe you can kind of see them right there, right now. I can kind of see those little bracts recurving backwards, kind of pointing out to the side or downward a little bit. So prairie blazing star is Liatris pycnostachya. Vegetatively, you can see again, it is something you can learn to identify vegetatively. It's going to have, here's a plant right here does not have a flowering stalk associated with it. It's just got basal leaves. And you see, you just have these really long, almost, again, grass-like leaves almost. They're a little bit broader than a grass leaf, but long, very, very long, narrow leaves. And a plant that has a flowering stalk will also have these long leaves towards the base of the plant. But then as we go up, as you can see, the leaves get smaller and smaller, shorter and shorter, until they fizzle out where the flowers start. All right, prairie blazing star. We're going to do a couple more. We're going to shift over here, and I'll pull the post back a little bit here so we can see this one right here. Anemone virginiana. Virginia anemone. This is in the buttercup family. And so Anemone virginiana, there's, well, we saw Anemone canadensis last month out at Davis Wetland. Anemone canadensis was growing in the sedge meadow we were looking at there, and we saw the flowers on it. This has a little bit different flowering inflorescence. It has kind of a cylindrical receptacle here, where, not now, but there were previously small flowers attached to this. The flowers are done, and we're just going into fruit mode now. But the two species that look like this, Anemone virginiana, this one, and then there's another one, Anemone cylindrica, both resemble this plant right here. They both have usually a group of leaves about midway up, and then a long stalk that comes up that has the flowers at the top. As you can see here, again, these are where the flowers were. Again, the fruits are forming there now. One way to separate the two, and it can be a little bit difficult, this one is usually found in wetter places, more mesic prairie, and cylindrica in drier prairie. But cylindrica, again, the drier prairie one, we usually have more leaves right here than just 3. Virginiana usually just has 3 leaves right here, as we can see right here. Okay, again, Anemone virginiana, Virginia windflower, or Virginia anemone, a couple of common names for it. And one more, this one is a good example of an eastern Iowa species. Many of these species, again, are species you could see throughout the state and prairie, but again, some species have more restricted biogeographical ranges, and I've only ever really seen this in eastern Iowa, so I think it's kind of restricted to the eastern, maybe third or so. This is called Virginia bunchflower. It's past its prime, all done with flowers. Looks like the fruits are kind of aborting here. They're not really very well formed there. Let's see if we can find another plant that has better fruits. But this is in what was in the Lily ACE at one time, and I think now, again, depending upon who you talk to, the taxonomists involved, it's either still in the Lily ACE, the Lily family, or it's in its own family, the Meliantha ACE. Melianthemum virginicum is the scientific name for bunchflower. Again, taxonomy is always changing, it seems like. The systematists are always trying to revise and better understand the phylogenetic relationships. So in some cases, this plant may come under the genus name of Veratrum, too. But if you look it up in Eilers and Rosa, the checklist of Iowa plants, it will be Melianthemum virginicum. Its leaves are dried out here, but they have monocot type leaves, of course, parallel veins, narrow, long leaves. There we go. All right, we're going to start with one that we've been seeing a lot of. We just haven't taken time to talk about, but we'll go ahead and do that now. Here is Monarda tubulosa, or wild bergamot. Another common name is bee balm. This one's a nice plant to get started in a reconstruction. It goes pretty easily from seed and get a lot of color right away. And like all mints, it's got a nice aroma to it. So it's got opposite leaves, got the square stem that mints have. And then rather than having the flowers in the axils of the leaves, clusters, essentially what's happened is all of those clusters have been tightly compacted into a single head at the very top here. You can see these kind of unique flowers. Pull one out here. These flowers have petals that are fused to form a structure called a corolla tube. And like many mints, the petals are fused in a way to form a lower lip and a sort of upper lip, although the upper lip's not as well developed here. Monarda fistulosa. This one is common in mesic prairies. So again, moist but well drained is what mesic means. And I think it was probably an important species in more partial shade, so savannas, maybe open woodlands as well. Should be an easy one to learn to identify. And again, nice one to smell too. Just grab a leaf and crush it a little bit, and you get that nice Monarda smell. All right, then we're going to look at one right next to it here, a little bit taller one. And if I pull off a leaf, you see there's 3 leaflets. So what family? Legume. Legume family, the Fabaceae. This is round-headed bush clover, Lespedeza capitata. So it will have the typical pea-shaped flower, but it's very small, and you really can't appreciate it very well. These even aren't out yet. I don't see any flowers that are actually out. You should, when the flowers are out, you can see some white petals, white color in the petals, but I don't see anything here at all in these, just flower buds, it looks like. But they're very dense, crowded. Again, trifoliate is a term meaning compound with 3 leaflets. So dense, trifoliate leaves. There's a bit of silvery coloration on the undersurface, the ventral side of these leaflets from the pubescence or the hairs, so kind of white silvery hairs. You can kind of get that shininess when you look at the plant, because some of the leaves, when you look at them, you're actually looking at the underside of the leaf here, as it's fairly upright. You have to pull it down like that to see the top. Lespedeza capitata, round-headed bush clover. You see this in a wide variety of prairie moisture regimes, from mesic to dry mesic. Some even fairly dry prairies can have plants on as well. I see it in a lot of pasture prairies as well, quite often. It seems to be a plant that, for whatever reason, has survived grazing fairly well, or at least can survive that and hang on in those pasture prairies. Lespedeza capitata. All right, then one more. Again, another really common one that many of you probably know already, perhaps, but one that's plentiful out here. We see lots of plants. Gray-headed coneflower. This is Ratibida pinnata. So this one again really has that characteristic aster flower morphology, in which again there's ray flowers, yellow petals here. These are again tiny, small, little florets is the term we use because the flowers are so small. So ray florets. And then in the center, on a kind of a column, a cylindrical column, are a large number of disc flowers. And that's the brownish color that we're seeing here. Gray-headed coneflower. This is a really great one to use in seed mixes to get some early color in the prairie. It's quick to establish. The seed's relatively inexpensive. It's a great prairie plant. Insects love it. And again, it can help show that you've got something growing out there. Because again, in a prairie construction, it can take 2 or 3 years really to really get most of those plants to the point where you can recognize them. But this one's going to be there maybe even that first year.